All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the Bureau of Disability Services presentation on choice of services and settings. My name is Sarah Van Sickle, Quality and Training Manager for Liberty for the Bureau of Disability Services. I'm joined today by Kim Colley, Quality Assurance Director for the Bureau of Disability Services, Shelley Thomas, Outcomes Management Director for the Bureau of Disability Services, and Kate Trackman, Behavior Specialist for Liberty for the Bureau of Disability Services. We're going to start with just a few housekeeping reminders. You're going to use the chat for immediate technical issues and to answer questions that may be asked throughout the presentation. Use the Q&A button if you have any questions that you would like to ask. Click closed captioning in order to see the live transcription. Complete the evaluation that will be sent in the follow-up email. That email will usually come about 24 hours after our presentation has ended. And as always, the recording will be uploaded to the FSSA YouTube channel after the live sessions have been conducted. Today's agenda is going to include what it means for individuals exercising choice in selecting a home, a housemate, a provider, waiver services and non-waiver services, what it means for individuals to choose who provides support, and how to support individuals when making choices in life. We began a deep dive into the home and community-based settings rule with the topic of supporting choice that was presented in September. During this presentation, we discussed some of the best practices associated with supporting individuals when making a choice. Today, we're going to expand that discussion and discuss supporting individuals when making a choice of services and settings. Then we will continue our discussion in 2024 with 3 scheduled presentations covering topics that include dignity, respect, and control, restrictions, and provider-owned and controlled settings rules and modifications. During our last training, we discussed ways to support individuals when making choice. We discussed why making choice is important, the need to celebrate choices, and the need to learn from choices. We touched on how choice is required by CMS's settings rule for individuals participating in home and community-based service waivers. Throughout this presentation, you will hear me refer to the home and community-based services as HCBS. Just as a reminder, and to ensure we are all working from the same premise, CMS and the Administration for Community Living, known as ACL, has said, the Home and Community-Based Service HCBS settings rule ensures that people who receive services and supports through Medicaid's HCBS programs have full access to the benefits of community living and are able to receive services and supports in the most integrated settings. It protects individuals' autonomy to make choices and to control their decisions in their lives, a right most people take for granted. This includes controlling personal resources, being treated with dignity, respect, and freedom from coercion and restraint, deciding what and when to eat, having visitors, being able to lock doors, and having the protections of a lease or other legally enforceable agreement. It has also identified that to be in compliance with the HCBS settings rule, a setting that is truly home and community-based is one that is integrated in and supports access to the greater community, provides opportunities to seek employment and work in competitive integrated settings, engage in community life, and control personal resources. It ensures that individuals receive services in the community to the same degree of access as individuals not receiving Medicaid home and community-based services. Is selected by the individual from among settings options, including non-disability specific settings and an option for a private unit in a residential setting. Person-centered service plans document the options based on the individual's needs, preferences, and for residential settings, the individual's resources. Ensures an individual's rights of privacy, dignity, respect, and freedom from coercion and restraint. Optimizes individual initiative, autonomy, and independence in making life choices. Facilitates individual choice regarding services and supports and who provides them. The settings rule also requires a person-centered process for planning HCBS, which means that the individual receiving services and supports directs the planning process, and the plan reflects their own preferences and goals they have set for themselves. You've probably heard the saying, "Nothing about me without me." That comes from the expectation that all decision-making is individualized and is driven by the person. The PCISP is the vehicle that assures needs are assessed and met, preferences are honored, opportunities are provided, choice is offered, rights are protected, and hopes and dreams for a good life can be achieved. To be successful, autonomy and choice must be supported. Today, we are going to provide a framework for supporting choice. During our last training, we defined choice as it relates to services and supports. Let's take a moment and see what everyone remembers from that training. Please take a few minutes and type into the chat box how we defined choice during the last webinar.
We have gotten some really great responses about what choice is. We've gotten what the person wants to engage in. It's determined by the individual. It's the freedom of preferences and information of all options. And it is giving individuals served various options.
Thank you for all sharing your thoughts. It seems like we have several different ideas of the definition of choice, and they all seem to really capture what choice is. As we discussed in previous presentation, the definition of choice was developed by the Living Well Committee. Choice is when anyone has ownership and control in their daily life and decisions, with opportunity to seek information, explore and consider a variety of available possibilities, and request guidance, advice, and other supports. Choice includes the ability to take risks, to succeed, to fail, to try again, and to change one's mind, as well as the assurance of respect for decisions and support to follow through. The definition of choice will drive the way that we support individuals when choosing services and supports. Before we continue, let's take a few minutes to view the Disability Service Land song starring Ellie Goldstein. The Disability Service song is a song about control, power, and self-determination. It's a reflection of what choice and decision-making looks like from her perspective. Sometimes choice that we present to an individual are based on our experiences and what we think is best for the individual. We have preconceived ideas about what the individual will like or what would be good for them. Because of that, we do not include them in the decision-making and may not recognize what an individual has made an important decision without anyone supporting them. Let's watch the video.
My social worker's making my parents sad. Our romance is growing flat. For he likes services and systems, while I like to go out and about. Goodness knows where my services will be. Service land doesn't care where I'm at. It looks as if my needs will never be met. Something must be done. You say challenging and I'll start shouting. You say workshop and I say sweatshop. Challenging, shouting, workshop, sweatshop. Let's call the whole thing off. You push outings and I'll start doubting. You push austerity and I'll cancel rebound therapy. Outings, doubting, austerity, tramplines. Let's call the whole thing off. But oh, if you cut my funding off, then we must part. Oh, if we ever part, then that might break your charts. You speak in acronyms, so I don't know what's happening. But if you say the R word, I'll get you transferred. Really, do we need each other? So we better call the calling off. Let's call the whole thing off. You say behavior like I'm a failure. You follow policy, but I want equality. Behavior, failure, policy, equality. Let's call the whole thing off. You hired Priscilla, and then there was Camilla. Stuff turned over really frightens my pet chinchilla. Priscilla, Camilla, oh my poor chinchilla. Let's call the whole thing off. But oh, if you had your way, you'd put me in a placement. And oh, if I knew your ways, then I would hide in a basement. So you go for group homes and I'll go for my own home. I'll find the right stuff and cancel the bank stuff. Really, do we need each other? So we better call the calling off. Let's call the whole thing off. You like compliance and calling on clients. You say jargon and I say pardon. Compliance, clients, jargon, pardon. Let's call the whole thing off. I like bananas and person-centered planners. I'm not non-verbal in front of my circle. Beth Mount, Jack the man, Pierpoint. Let me send this side the way. So I'll do self-direction and you hold your objections and ask for my consent before you do my assessment. Really, do we need each other? So we better call the calling off. Let's call the whole thing off.
As we're navigating through the rest of today's presentation, think about the words and phrases that Ellie used. I like to go out and about. Who knows where my services will be? You speak in acronyms, so I don't understand. Behavior, failure, policy, equality, and I'll go for my own home. Keeping these things in mind could help us support individuals when choosing their services and the setting where they are delivered, where they live and with whom, and the staff who work with them. Let's explore these topics in greater detail. Let's begin with supporting choice of a residential setting. If you take the jargon away, it's really about where individuals live, their home. Home looks different to each of us. Individuals we support should have the same options for where they live that everyone else has: a house, a condo, an apartment, in a big city or a small city, near the center of the city or in the suburbs. Frequently, individuals who receive services have a choice of what's available. Helping individuals to choose where they live begins with discovering what's important to them rather than telling them what's available. Some ways to learn about what's important to them and what they want include having a conversation with the individual and people who know the individual well. Have a few questions in mind to guide the conversation. Some ideas might be to ask questions like, what do you like about where you live right now? What was your favorite place to live? If you could live anywhere, what would your home look like? What is important to you about where you live? What don't you like about where you're living now? What would you like to change? Be ready to abandon your scripted questions to follow the individual's lead. For example, if the individual tells you they know exactly where they want to live and proceeds to tell you that they want to live with their friend on Main Street, where you are already providing services, you may ask different questions like, have you been there? What did you like? Why do you want to live there? Or if the individual tells you that they left their last home because someone there was taking their money, you would probably ask other questions in addition to the ones you planned, like, what would make you feel safe in your home? You can also spend time with the individual. Being with the individual is almost as important as having a conversation. Sometimes individuals don't have the experience to answer the questions. If the individual has been in the service system for a long time, they may not know how to respond to questions like, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? Or what would your home look like? Being with the individual might help you know when they are having trouble answering a question. Sometimes individuals try to tell you what they think you want to hear. Spending time with the individual helps you build rapport so that they are more willing to share thoughts and feelings. Sometimes individuals don't use words to communicate, so spending time with them helps you gain insight into what is important. For example, if someone is uncomfortable or agitated in a noisy coffee shop and calm at a quiet coffee shop, you might think or hypothesize that they would prefer living in a quiet home, like a single family home, rather than an apartment building or on a quiet residential street rather than near a busy fire station. This is just something you might be thinking, but you would need to validate it with the individual or others who know the individual. Go with the individual to visit different places, to talk about the experience and watch their reactions. This combines having a conversation and spending time with the individual and can be used to test out your hypothesis. In exploring different options, typically we begin by talking about options the individual has. For some individuals, hearing about their options is good. Others might want to see their options. Some might want to see a picture or video, explore the neighborhood and see how close the park is, or what restaurant and stores are nearby, where the nearest library is, or whether they can get to their work, school, church, or family easily. Now, I know you were thinking that's pie in the sky. Individuals can't afford to live where they want, in a big house in downtown Indianapolis with restaurants and shopping nearby, and that there are limits on what our organization can do or where we can provide support. For example, if the individual says they want to live close to their brother who lives in an area with a high crime rate, or where historically your organization has not been able to keep good staff, you and the individual may need to decide if you as a provider can meet their wants and needs. It helps if we as service providers separate what's best for the individual from what's best for the organization. We are challenged to be focused on individuals and not on bricks and mortar. We are challenged to think from the individual's point of view rather than openings, slots, or beds. And we are challenged to live in the real world that limits our flexibility as service providers. Strive for balance, learn about individuals, help individuals learn about options, support individuals to weigh out options, and honor choice. We are also challenged with issues surrounding a lease. The HCBS settings rule requires there be a signed, valid lease that provides the same protections from eviction as non-disabled individuals. Let's talk about what that means. Properly executed leases are important when it comes to an individual's ability to change residential providers. We often find the lease is in the name of the provider. If an individual chooses to change providers, they may be forced to move. When an individual chooses to move to a new home, the individual is required to sign a lease or legally enforceable agreement. No one else should be signing the lease unless it's a legal representative. Every individual also has the right to the protections of a lease, which means the individual must be included in the legal lease for their home. One of the issues that the settings rule intends to address is that services are often tied to the service location. If someone lives at 123 Main Street, they receive services from PPM. Some of that is related to the brick and mortar. In the past, the organization has owned the property or been the leaser. If they are not the service provider, the individual has to move from their home and someone who is served by PPM moves into 123 Main Street. The settings rule attempts to uncouple the residents from the service. If Patricia no longer wants to receive services from PPM, she should have the option to choose a service provider without moving from her home. This is the individual's home, and the individual should want to live there and feel comfortable in their home that they are living in. This home is not a provider location, a provider site, or a provider place of business. The minimum requirements for any physical place an individual rents or occupies must include the same responsibilities and protections from eviction that tenants have under the tenant landlord laws of the state, county, or other designated entity. When securing housing, an individual must sign and enter into a valid lease or legally enforceable agreement. The valid lease is between the property owner and the individual, and the lease must be signed by all parties, including the guardian if applicable. Indicate if subleasing or residency tenant agreements are allowable, and it must outline the responsibilities under the agreement, such as rent, room, board, the amount due and the due date, any responsibilities the individual has that would include the utilities, yard maintenance, or painting, and the responsibilities of the property owner, the maintenance of the dwelling, providing advance notice before entering the dwelling, and the installation of smoke detectors. Also, eviction and termination notification timeframes and any specific conditions that may apply. All parties must be provided a signed copy of the lease. A legally enforceable agreement is a sublease or a resident tenant agreement based off the original lease between the landlord and the tenant or provider. A sublease or a residency tenant agreement is typically between the provider and individual. It also must be signed by all parties, including the guardian. It must include a statement that subleasing or residency tenant agreements are allowable. It must outline the responsibilities under the agreement, such as the rent, room, and board, the amount that's due, the due date, and to whom, the responsibilities of the individual that might include the utilities, yard maintenance, or painting, the responsibilities of the property owner, the maintenance of the dwelling, providing advance notice before entering the dwelling, and the installation of smoke detectors. Also, eviction and termination notification timeframes and any other special conditions that may apply. All parties must be provided a signed copy of the original lease and a sublease or residency tenant agreement. Providers cannot just move someone into someone else's home without everyone living in the home agreeing to the individual moving in and the individual being added to the lease. Even in what a provider would consider a potential emergency transition situation, the provider does not have the right to move an individual into someone else's home. In these circumstances, the individual, the support team, and the provider must have a conversation about what the emergency looks like and determine what the individual or individuals with whose home it is view as a success with the individual and what they would view as something that isn't working. This should be a written plan, and the individual must agree with the plan. If the individual does not agree or changes their mind, no one should move in. This is important to remember as it is the individual's home and they do have a choice of housemates. Let's talk about choosing housemates. Similar strategies used in finding a home can be used for supporting someone to choose the individuals with whom they live. Learn about the individual. Help the individual to learn about their options, listen to them, and honor their choice. It might be helpful to talk about why individuals have housemates, remembering that individuals with disabilities who receive HCBS should have the same options as individuals who do not receive services. Most of the time, outside the service world, people live with other people because they have a relationship with them, or they live with people because they want to share resources so they can live the life they choose. In a service world, individuals frequently have housemates. Often, that is more related to not having the financial resources or having the support needs that require a higher budget. The state is required by the settings rule to offer individuals receiving HCBS the opportunity to live alone. Let's talk about that for a minute. Individuals must have the option to live alone if they have the financial means. Sometimes, as providers, we have to think outside the box when it comes to supporting an individual with the financial means they have available. Let's talk about Maria and how her team supported her to live alone in her home. Maria purchased a home with money from her trust fund. To help pay for services, she tried having a housemate. She could afford the house, but not the services. Maria had staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the state and provider encouraged her to have a housemate. After many unsuccessful matches, the support team had to come up with some other ideas. Maria and her sisters decided if her sisters provided some of her supports, Maria could have support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and live in her home without a housemate. Her sisters took turns providing supports from Saturday morning to Monday morning, and that lasted for many years. Maria was happy to have her own house without a housemate. She looked forward to spending weekends with her sisters and developing great relationships with her nieces. After the change, Maria got along better with her paid staff and her anxieties began to diminish. The state was then able to support Maria living alone. Sometimes individuals supported are lucky enough to live with their best friend, partner, or spouse. Frequently, however, individuals supported live with other individuals because they don't have the financial resources to live alone. Too often, the individuals they live with are individuals they don't know, or at least don't know very well. So what can service providers do to support individuals in choosing with whom they live? The same strategies to support individuals in choosing where they live can be used to support individuals to choose with whom they live. They need to have conversations, spend time with the individual, share options, help the individual weigh the options, listen, and honor their choice. Let's dive a little into options and weighing options. What options do individuals with disabilities have? Well, they could live alone if they have the financial means. They could know who they want to live with, and that individual wants to live with them and also has the resources. They might want to live with someone who isn't ready, willing, able to be their roommate right now. They may know the type of individual they want to live with, and you have a potential match. They may know the type of individual they want to live with, and you don't have a good match, but you have someone they could meet to see if it would work out. They don't have an idea about who would be a good housemate and are looking to their team to help them. What are some ways to support individuals in weighing options? Understand expectations. Does the individual want someone to share expenses? Does the individual want someone to share their life? Or are they somewhere in the middle? Some individuals share an apartment. They split the rent and the utilities. They share common areas like the living room and kitchen. They share responsibility for household tasks. They buy their own groceries, do their own dishes, and their own laundry. Sometimes in these shared living arrangements, one individual will take on some tasks in exchange for a benefit. For example, Tavarius lives with Luis. Tavarius agreed to be responsible for taking the trash and recycling out for pickup each week and also the snow removal. Luis pays an extra $50 in rent. In the service world, frequently, the service provider expects the housemates to share everything. They not only share rent and utilities, but they shop for groceries together, cook together, or for each other, or they have staff. They go everywhere together, share all of the household tasks, and are joined at the hip. In fairness, that sounds like an archaic practice. Typically, good service providers recognize that individuals don't want to spend every minute with their housemate. Most of us probably don't want to spend most of our days with the same person. Even people in committed relationships rarely work, play, and live with each other without having some time for themselves or their own personal relationships. The staff play an important role in how things go within someone's home. Therefore, good staff matches are important. Discovering what the individual wants, needs, expects, considering options, and ultimately making a choice of staff is fairly similar to making a big choice like where to live and who to live with. We would like to hear how you support individuals in choosing their staff. Please take a couple of seconds to enter strategies you implement to support individuals in the chat.
We have some answers coming in now. So people are saying that it's based on people's wants and needs. Always asking if people are feeling comfortable and happy with their staff. Having the person interview the potential staff. Knowing and discussing the right questions to ask. Giving people several options. Talking with people about what type of staff they get along with and with what those included traits are. And giving choices.
So in choosing staff, organizations have supported individuals in many different ways. Here are some other ideas. Usually, one of the first steps in choosing staff is to write an ad or a job description. Individualizing the ads or job description can help an organization ensure they are offering the individual supported the best options. The ad or job description can be tailored to reflect what staff should do. For example, going to the coffee shop daily, dress like you're going to the gym, but go to the lake to fish. They need to know how or be willing to learn how to make chocolate chip cookies. And then interviewing. Involve an individual supported by their organization in interviewing potential staff. The individual should be part of the interview team and play a vital role in the structured interview process. They should be asking prescribed questions along with other members of the interview team. But don't assign questions based on disability. The individual looks at the world from their point of view and will be able to make a recommendation based not only on what they hear. All members of the interview team should receive training on allowable questions, including follow-up questions, and have the same responsibility for rating candidates and making hiring recommendations. Once a candidate has been screened and is eligible to be hired, do you play basketball? What's the difference between a layup and a hook shot? Who is Reggie Miller? Ask the individual for their opinion. Watch interactions between the candidate and the individual conducting the interview, and always support the individual's choice about staff. Remember that choice is fluid. Sometimes even the best of us can make unfortunate hiring decisions. It's best to keep the lines of communication open. Check in with the individual about how things are going. Support the individual in talking with the new staff about what they like and what they want to change. That might, of course, be you talking to the staff, coaching the individual, or perhaps just encouraging them to have the conversation. Set up standard practices about how often. I would typically think as often as 1 to 2 times a week for the first month or so, and then going down to maybe 1 or 2 times a month. After you've established that it looks like it's going in the right direction, then you can check in less frequently. A typical time to check in is at the PCISP meeting, but consider it staff evaluation time. Individuals can also have input into staff evaluations. Remembering always that individuals make choices all the time and change their minds. Check in frequently, be approachable and available, and honor choice. Sometimes this statement causes a little stress. If Joe says, "I'm angry at the staff from last night, they told me I couldn't have a burrito," does that mean the provider needs to pull the staff from the home? Not necessarily. It's acceptable and advisable to work with the individual to address concerns, teaching Joe and the staff to communicate more effectively and to negotiate. If Joe continues to have concerns with staff members and how they treat them, then you may have to decide that it's necessary to sever the relationship. Being surrounded by the right staff can have great results, as can be seen in this next video. Now let's take a few seconds to watch a short clip. In this clip, Chris has been supported to visit a tattoo parlor and get a grandfather clock tattoo. If Chris did not have the right members providing support, this dream may not have been seen through to reality. Although Chris's guardian and some staff may not agree with tattoos, Chris wanted a tattoo, was excited about the tattoo, and was supported by his staff to see getting the tattoo through to the end. As you support individuals in making choice, always remember, people with disabilities are not limited in their capacity to enjoy the full human experience, and it is our role to make sure individuals have a microphone for their voice when it comes to choosing the things that they want. Let's watch another short clip about Isaac. In this clip, Isaac's support person talks about the things that are important to Isaac and how the support person assists Isaac with being who he is and having access to the things that are important.
a developmental disability support worker. This is Isaac, who I support. Isaac has Down syndrome. That means he's always happy. What no one tells you is how much fun this job is. This is a job that completely changes depending on who you are supporting. Whatever we do, I need to make sure we have fun. I help Isaac shop and he picks out what he wants. And I try not to bore him with too many healthy options. Everyone thinks I support him, but they don't see how he supports me. One of the most important things I do is to help Isaac keep in contact with his friends and help them meet up. Isaac is extremely creative and loves to dance. I encourage Isaac to be exactly who he is. Change can be really hard for Isaac. I give him all the time he needs. All behavior is communication. I am not in charge of Isaac by any means. I am his microphone, not his voice. Trust is a huge part of our relationship, and I really hope Isaac doesn't tell anybody how bad my singing is. Some people say they can never do this job, but I truly hope one day they say they can. I am a developer.
It was important for Isaac to be connected to his friends, make his own choices, dance, and be creative. Not everyone is going to want to do all of these things because everyone is different. Just as each individual is different, so is each provider. A good provider fit is important. Let's talk about that. Choosing service providers is essentially the same process we went through when discussing a choice of where to live and with whom to live. Things to consider include: discover what's important to the individual. Do they want a large provider, a small provider, a new provider, or an established provider? Explore options. What providers are available in their area? What if they want a provider that is not currently in their area? Weigh options. Do they move to a new town to get their desired provider? Do they learn about other similar providers in their current town? Communicate the decision. Who do they tell? How do they communicate their choices? Listen. As a trusted person, listen to what the individual has to say. If you have legitimate concerns, express them during this part of the process and honor choice. Be respectful. Do not try to talk them out of it. And use many of the same strategies having a conversation, spending time with an individual, helping individuals explore options by visiting service providers, interviewing service providers, and individuals supported by the organization. Specific techniques might be different depending on the experience and preferences of the individual. Some service providers will be HCBS or waiver providers, and others may be non-waiver providers. The process is the same. Part of honoring choice is accepting that individuals may establish relationships with people who work with them. If a person chooses to leave and work for another provider, the individual may experience a sense of loss. Ways you can support the individual during this time is to make sure the individual is informed about the status of their staff. Not knowing who or if someone is going to show up can cause a lot of anxiety for individuals. It can cause sadness and confusion. Make sure the individual is aware that someone new will be showing up. Make sure that the individual can meet the new support staff and decide if the individual wants the new support staff working with them and in their home. Reach out to the individual's case manager to inform them of the change that has occurred. Part of the case manager's role is to provide support that is unbiased in provider relationships, to facilitate informed choice regarding services and supports, and to remain impartial about the array of options when ensuring informed choice. By reaching out, the case manager has the opportunity to make sure the individual is comfortable with their choice of support staff that they are being offered and discuss other options that may be available. In some cases, this can lead to a provider change. The individual has the right to change providers in order to continue working with someone important to them. If the individual does not want to rely on their case manager, or their case manager is not available to help provide informed choice, individuals may rely on another trusted member of their support team who can remain unbiased when supporting the individual to make choices related to services and settings. Just remember, as you are supporting individuals with choice, a provider's policies cannot be written in a way that would somehow restrict an individual's right to stay with a staff person after they leave a provider. A staff may inform an individual that they are leaving, but not where they are going unless the individual or guardian asks. Although some would say this can be viewed as solicitation, an individual always retains the right to choose. The goal of the settings rule is to ensure that individuals who are using HCBS have the same opportunities as individuals who are not using HCBS. Individuals should be connected to services and supports outside of those available on the waiver. Individuals may be choosing physician services, driver's education, job skills training, or GED or higher education. There may be other services that are less big decisions, such as where to bank, hair salons, or even grocery stores. But despite the gravity of the decision, individuals may still seek assistance. In these cases, the techniques are the same. Remember, always that individuals make choices all the time and change their mind. Check in frequently, be approachable and available, and honor choice. Take advantage of the natural opportunities to check in with individuals. You have taken someone to the bank. On the way home, ask how the experience went. Did they like the way they were treated? Did they find the bank easy to use? Is there anything they would like to change? If any of the responses were negative, explore the response in more detail to see if there's anything that you can assist with. A word of caution. Not all negative responses require a change. Be sure to ask, do you want me to help you change your bank? Before you put the wheels in motion and make the change. It's important to keep in mind that an individual may not want support in making decisions. If an individual wants to be supported, support staff should not be the ones leading the way. They should be there to walk alongside the individual and support them when asked. At any time, individuals can decide they want to make a change to their services and supports and the setting where they are delivered. There is no set timeline or frequency in which someone can decide to make a change. When initiating a change or supporting someone to make a change, it's important to know who's in charge of the decision-making process, who provides the options, and how the individual is supported in making choice. Supporting individuals to live their best lives is not easy. There's not a play-by-play book or a recipe. It's individualized. It takes time, patience, and diligence, and sometimes it's just back to the drawing board. The framework is here. The individuals, whether the individual, the staff, the family members, other supporters, are all different. It's challenging. Stay focused on the individual and how you, as an exceptional service provider, can help the individual to live their best life. Share your success stories and learn from your experiences. We've talked a lot about choice and how it's driven by the individual, but what happens if there's a guardian? While the guardian has indeed been given final decision-making authority by the court in certain areas, they are also obligated to weigh what's important to and for the individual. The team can help support the individual in expressing their desires when a conflict arises between a guardian and an individual. I think it's important to pause here for a moment and mention that while a guardian has legal authority to make certain decisions for an individual, they cannot require providers to act against the standards outlined by CMS and the HCBS settings rule. If a guardian demands actions be implemented that go against the settings rule, they can be reminded that it is a federal mandate that the state must follow. Participation in the waiver is voluntary, and if someone does not agree with the settings rule, they can withdraw from services. Even with the guardian, individuals receiving HCBS services retain the right to have protections of a lease, make their choice of roommate, have freedom and support to control their own schedule and activities, and have visitors of their choosing at any time. Individuals should, to the greatest extent possible, lead or direct their PCISP planning process and team meetings, as well as have their perspectives, wishes, and goals addressed and considered when identifying services and living arrangements. Sometimes educating a guardian on the settings rule can help eliminate obstacles. It's important to share resources surrounding the HCBS settings rule with guardians so they can understand the rights afforded through the settings rule. Keeping in mind that guardians are likely coming from a place of love and that the journey through life with their loved one, which may not have been easy, has guided the directions they're taking, makes the need for frequent private conversations even more important. Take time to listen to what the guardian has to say. What are they worried about? What do they want for the individual in the future? Does this align with the individual? And these are all great starts to important conversations. When meaningful conversations are happening, it becomes easier to define the why behind the guardian's decisions, as well as the why behind what is driving the individual towards what they want. As they become clear, the trajectory of the conversation begins to lead to addressing the concerns and ways to support the individual's needs to make the decision that's important to them. Open communication is vital, and a willingness to be open-minded and listen on all parts is critical. Resources to guide these conversations are available on the BEADS website, including Charting the Life course tools. There'll be a link provided at the end of the presentation. Before we wrap up our conversation today, I want to take a few minutes to share one last video. This video stars Roger Crown and it's called Naturally. Simply put, this song is about the importance of home, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do.
There's a long hall with a steel door that kept the light outside. Now I roll down and I roll out, and I look back one last time. Down a long drive and it's tree lined. Took a long time, now I'm gone. On the road, heading back home, back where I was born. And I'm headed for my home, the one I claim for me, never return again. It's where I wanna be, finally find myself home naturally. The door swings wide, apartment 3B, one bedroom and it's mine. I lay my things out, these are my things, well, all perfectly mine. And I breathe in and I breathe out on the balcony outside. And I look down and I look out, and I see both far and wide. Well, I'm living in my home, the one I claim for me, never return again. It's where I wanna be, finally find myself home naturally. Across the stone bridge, near the highway, with a flower bed outside my door. Yeah, with roses and gardenias. Oh, they are vibrant and alive. When I wake up, I may head out or just stay here inside. And I may roll down or downtown, whatever I decide. And I come home when I come home, and I see just what I'll see. And I'll be what I'm supposed to, yeah. I'll be just what I
I hope what you were able to also see was the importance of home in this video. Roger moved to his apartment. It was decorated the way he wanted. It included the things that were important to him. And if you remember from the video from the supporting choice presentation, Roger stopped to purchase a rose in that video. So it's safe to say he's going to enjoy the roses that he will grow in his garden. Roger had a key to his apartment and he was excited to invite all of his friends over. Our goal today was to provide you with some tips on supporting individuals and exercising choice with their services, where they receive them, and by whom. I want to reiterate, we know this is not easy, but we also know it's important. Decisions cannot be made about individuals without their input. Stay focused on the individual. Employ the 6 techniques we have discussed throughout the training: discovery, exploring, weighing options, communicating, listening, and honoring choice. The team should work together to support the individual in these areas. Beads is also available should the team need assistance. This brings us to the end of our presentation. And as always, we want to remind you of our mission to ensure that all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. Remember that we're all in this together. And if you need additional information, you can reach out to the 800 number listed or to bds.help@fssa.in.gov. As always, this is a reminder for you to stay connected with the Indiana Bureau of Disability Services by signing up for the DDARS list served. And don't forget to follow the Indiana Bureau of Disability Services on Facebook. The Bureau of Disability Services Quality Assurance website includes information on the quality on-site provider review process, previously presented webinars, home and community-based settings rule, and investigations. And it's important resources to use when looking for tools you can implement. Also included on this additional resources slide is the link to Open Futures Learning, Charting the Life course, and the Person-Centered Risk Management training. Don't forget, you'll receive a follow-up email within the next 24 hours that comes directly from Zoom. This is going to also include a link for an evaluation. Please take time to complete our evaluation and remember that your email serves as your attendance record from today. And Shelley, are there any questions that we have that need to be addressed?
No, I think the questions we've gotten or we've answered. There's only one question about will it be recorded? And the answer to that is yes. After we finish, we have one more training left. Then we will get this uploaded and an announcement out for everybody to know where they can locate the information. So yes, it is going to be recorded and posted. So.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody again for your attendance, and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you very much.